And we'll now switch to our next presenter before we head into the break. It will be Thomas Silkjaer. Happy to welcome you, Thomas. Should be able to activate your camera right now. You probably know Thomas from his great data visualizations of the XRP ledger, and he's also a well-known Forbes contributor and writing a lot of articles, very well-researched articles about the XRP ledger. So very happy to have you here
I'm happy
today,
to be
Thomas.
here. So I'm just checking in now on video before I start. I have a presentation that I would like to share. So I'll try to share my screen. And please, somebody with audio, give me a shout if it doesn't show.
I can hear you well, and I'm not seeing the screen right now.
All right. Do you see my screen?
Not yet, no.
Okay. This worked on our dry run. Okay. Here we go.
Now I can see it, yes.
Perfect, great. So sorry about that. Okay, so well, thank you for having me, giving me this opportunity to tell you all a bit more about the Explorer project. For those who are familiar with what I've been doing in graph visualization and big data analytics from Twitter and Forbes and the community blog, the Explorer.com project is a culmination of all of this into one website or one service. So what I'd like to do now is to invite you all to a quick tour behind the scenes of Explorer. So when you first visit the website, it will look more or less like any other blog explorer, with all of the features you have learned to expect from such services. So you can browse accounts, you can get details of transactions, and you can show transaction history by accounts, and a lot of stuff like that. But the website is only the tip of the iceberg. So Explorer, it's not a blog explorer, it's a deep dive analytics tool. So beneath the surface, we store, analyze, and serve all the data that is generated by the use of the XRP ledger. So it's not just a blog explorer. There is a lot happening that can't be seen when you visit the website. So I'll take you on. This is going to be for some very maybe confusing. We love data, and data is what we do. So I'll try to explain in some simple words what we are actually doing behind the scenes. So whenever somebody is sending a payment, this on the XRP ledger, this payment happens publicly. So all of the transactions on the ledger is public, and anyone can look up the balance and history of any account. You don't have to own the account to see the history. So this kind of activity where one user is sending money to another user, that can easily be imagined as a graph where nodes, in this case accounts, are connected by arrows that shows the flow of money from one account to another account. And that is basically what we're doing in Explorer. We're seeing all of the activity as nodes and relationships and storing all of it in a modern database, a graph database. But not only the payments, but also all of the other stuff that is happening on the XRP ledger, escrows, payment channels that are being created and claimed, the decentralized exchange offers that are made and fulfilled and stuff like that. So all of the features, the entire history. But the transactions are, even though they're public, they're also somewhat anonymous, so that's often referred to as pseudo-anonymous, because you don't have any details connecting accounts to the identities of people in the real world. And this is only half true, because if you run a service, if you're a service provider on the XRP ledger, and like an exchange or a payment provider, or if you have a web shop, have a store, and you want to accept payments in XRP or any IOU on the XRP ledger, you have to share your address. And as soon as you have shared your address, well, you have made that connection between your real identity as a store or as an exchange and that account on the XRP ledger, or that address on the XRP ledger. And that is one of the things we do. That is collecting the information about accounts, such as exchanges, service providers, but also accounts that are used in scams or in Ponzi schemes or in thefts. And we use that intelligence in combination with the graph database we have to infer relationships and extrapolate the data to find associated accounts and gather more intelligence. So we rely on the data that we have already collected to find other information about other accounts based on the pattern this graph is creating, so to speak. So Explorer loves data, and data is what drives us. And we're currently on our third data model of the graph database, and we're going to be iterating on that data model over time, fine-tuning it to deliver the data that we need, that is beneficial both for fraud detection, but also for business analytics, money flow analytics, but also for developers who is building on top of the XRP ledger. So to summarize, in the center, we have our database, our graph database. It is being fed in real time with data from the XRP ledger. So it's always up to date. And it's expressing everything that happens as a giant graph. Intelligence, such as information about the fraudulent accounts, the scam accounts, they are combined with the XRP ledger data in the database. But unlike the XRP ledger feeding our database with information about what happens on the XRP ledger, intelligence is going both directions. It's a constant iteration. So whenever we gather intelligence, we add it to the database. We're running some algorithms and some stuff, and it feeds our intelligence, and it's a circular motion that is growing constantly as we add new information to it, as the XRP ledger also generates new data, creates new patterns. And then from the database comes the output, which is such as the tip of the iceberg, the Block Explorer. So the Explorer website you see today is being fed directly from our database, not directly from the XRP ledger. And it's basically just a proof of concept that we have all the data, we can show it, we can query it quickly, and we can use it for different things. But we also use the database for other stuff, such as the advisory list and a data API. The advisory list that most people know from XRP Forensics, which is now a part of Explorer, it's a list of accounts that have been manually added to the list and flagged depending on what and categorized depending on what kind of scam or theft or Ponzi scheme or kind of scam or fraudulent activity it's associated with. And then those manually added and vetted addresses are used algorithmically to infer and find associated accounts. So the flagged accounts are given a status of 1 to 3, depending on the probability score, where if we manually add an address, we're 100% certain this address is a part of a scam, it's a category 3. And category 2 are almost certainly fraudulent with a slight room for error, and category 1 is less certain of risk. So if I was an exchange, I wouldn't block payments from category 1, but I would do it for category 3. I would maybe withhold it and manually look at it if it was a category 2, and so speak, and so on. So if we look at history, just in 2019 and 2020, we have seen at least 17 million XRP being sent to the giveaway scammers. So 17 million XRP sent from regular people to people pretending to be Ripple and saying, hey, we have an airdrop, send us some money, we'll send 2 times or 10 times in return. And more than half of these 17 million has been sent directly from an exchange to the giveaway scam. So there is a difference here, because if you withdraw money from an exchange to a giveaway scam, well, there is actually somebody processing the payment for you, the exchange you're withdrawing the funds from. And we see the most common practice for fighting criminal finances is a reactive response. So as an example, an exchange is looking through received transactions and scoring these and reporting them to the financial intelligence unit or something like that after the fact, after they receive the money, after they have been stolen or scammed for some people. We believe that the reactive processing should be real time and be supplemented by a proactive effort. So protecting users from sending funds to accounts that are most likely fraudulent. The data we have now is used by anti-money laundering software providers and different exchanges, and they're using it to score and report incoming payments in this kind of reactive response. But the list is also used proactively by block explorers such as XRP Scan and BitThumb to show warnings on accounts that are in the advisory list. But it's also used by GitHub. When you try to send money from your GitHub account, it will show a warning if you're sending it to a giveaway scam. And some, which has been off topic by Vitz and Marcus here this evening as well. And we're hoping that this will just grow to a lot of different services, because if you have the proactive response, well, you could actually bring down in 1.5 years, 9 million XRP. You could bring that down to maybe 500,000 or 1 million, and it'll suddenly be less lucrative for scammers to use the XRP ledger. So that's our goal. So the data API that we have, it's in a very early beta stage, but it is already available with documentation on the website. And this is one of our, this deserves a lot of more attention and can be extended far beyond the current skeleton. So this is one of our attention or focuses in the future. Another thing we use the database for is analytics, and that could be exploring the data for deviations and anomalies in the activity on the ledger. It could be repetitive partial payments sent to the same account that could indicate a successful partial payment exploit. A couple of weeks ago, we caught 2, alerted the service providers, and they closed the security holes in the services. But it could also be used to analyze trading patterns on the decentralized exchange, also to find more information about circular payment exploits and a lot of other stuff. From time to time, we share some blog posts on Coil and some tweets with funny finds. But this is just very fun. We love data, and this is very fun. So we also visualize key metrics on accounts to try to show key information about accounts that could be of use depending on what you're looking for, of course. So the top one called XRP flow, it shows a chart that shows where the majority of money in the account comes from and where the majority of funds are going to. So you can quickly get an idea if it's a cold wallet, you'll see maybe one or two senders and nobody on the receiving end or something like that. But also stuff like the balance development of the account over time and the account activity by week, day, and time of day. So you can see if it's only active in business hours, and maybe even start looking at the geography of the account based on this is all in UTC time zone. So you could see if it's active in the evenings UTC, then it's probably not a European or something like that. But the future Explorer is a completely bootstrapped project, and the aim is to turn it into a sustainable business. So at the moment, we are focusing on the entire setup. We're looking at ways to expand our reach with both the anti-money laundering data and analytics. We're also beginning to fine-tune our data models. As late as today, we announced our pricing models for commercial use of our APIs. So the Explorer website, the Blog Explorer, again, it's only the tip of the iceberg and a proof of concept. But being a Blog Explorer, other people are far better at doing that. But if you want to know what is happening on the XRP ledger, we are the ones to go to. Okay. Thank you, and questions, and I'll try to switch back to video.
Thank you, Thomas. Amazing presentation. Thanks a lot. You can turn your camera on, and then we have quite a few questions in the chat. Again, start first with my own. I mean, the scams we have seen over the last months or even years in attacking members of the XRP community or attacking XRP, they're really a pain in the ass. So it's a really great initiative. Do you see that this is very special to XRP or Ripple, or do you see it overall in the entire crypto universe, let's say? And if yes, why is XRP the perfect target?
It's happening. XRP is probably one of the smallest. They're targeting the top coins. If you look, it's Bitcoin, it's Ethereum, it's XRP, it's Litecoin, and if you look at the websites they spawn, there's typically more websites for both Bitcoin and Ethereum. But I think one of the main differences is that you can actually do something about it on the XRP ledger, where it's much easier to hide transactions and bounce them between a lot of accounts on the other networks, because you have it's limited on the XRP ledger because you have the reserve fees and stuff like that. That makes
easier
it
to track, right?
Easier to do a lot of stuff. Yeah.
We have a question from Scooby. Does that scam sent from Coinbase, but results sent to Binance majority reflect scams wanting to get into something untraceable?
Sorry.
A scam
can you repeat
sent from
that question?
Coinbase, but the result is sent to Binance. So is there a certain pattern that you see?
That's random. I think a lot of small services, swap services, coin swap services, are also piggybacking on Binance. So when we see a deposit to Binance, it can actually also be someone using a coin swap service to swap it for something else, and that's what most people are trying to do, because then they can see if this, then it's fast for scammers to swap the money. So not all of it is Binance, but there are certain exchanges who are slower to react and let stuff happen and are difficult to reach.
Okay. From Ahmed, we have the question that will your services enable us to retrieve XRPs that were taken through fraud or scam and deny scammers access to the money they stole?
That's one of the things we hope to do. That's the reactive response. So the more exchanges who is using our advisory lists to process incoming payments, the more exchanges will actually start seizing money as they receive them. Because as long as XRP is in accounts on the XRP ledger, nobody can get it back. So we have to wait for the scammers to actually deposit it to an exchange or a service and then trap it, so to speak. So we hope that we can assist in that way.
Then another question from Tom. What can I do if I think I'm falsely flagged as a scammer? Just reach out to you, or is there a certain process in place?
We have a contact form on the website. So if there is a false flag, we'll resolve that as fast as possible. It should be very unlikely, at least if you're falsely flagged, it would be a category 1 in most cases. We've seen that also related to services piggybacking, coin swap services piggybacking on Binance and stuff like that. That can be falsely flagged.
And then have been sometimes the question, what is already live? Is it in beta? What can be actually used? And in the meantime, while you answer, we'll share the link to the service.
Yeah, so the website is live. It's in beta because it's not 100% stable. Again, it's a bootstrap project. It's so we could benefit from gaining some momentum and gaining some funds to upgrade our hardware and stuff like that. But it's fully functional. It's a blog explorer. On the user side, you can it's up to date. It's synchronized live, so it's only a second maybe behind the XRP ledger. The advisory list is live and can be subscribed to. The data API is live. Will require us to generate an API license or API key for you to use it, but it's basically functional. Beta is just because, well, we're constantly working on it and we've not found a final model.
Okay, so everybody can check it out. And you recently introduced like a pricing model just today or yesterday. You announced it on Twitter. So you want actually the long-term business model that we heard also from Marcus. And it goes hand in hand with the question from Scooby. What feedback do you get from exchanges or other business players when you offer these services? Do they embrace it? You actually want them to pay for it, right?
Yes, we've only received positive response so far, and I think it's well, that's not any guarantee, of course, but a lot of exchanges and services was actually using the list before we pulled, so to speak, the plug and said we need to commercialize this somehow. But we have received great response so far and are having our first meeting scheduled already to discuss
Amazing
partnerships.
Then we have a great question from Musa. Have you considered giving some sort of badge or award, let's say, or certificate to an exchange that is working with you to help to stop scammers? It would be in the interest of the exchanges, obviously, and it would help them attract trust, right?
I think the best badge an exchange could get is publishing a blog post or news that they have stopped this or this much money from being launched. So if we advertise our partnerships, if exchanges advertise it, well, then maybe we actually give the scammers a roadmap to what exchanges not to try to withdraw funds to. So it's a
double-edged sword. Yeah. Question from Wesa from Sorogenic. For forensics for exchanges, do you think there would be a use case to support the destination tag of accounts?
So for flagging fraudulent destination tags?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
Or do I misunderstand? Well, destination tags are not implemented in the same way on all exchanges. Some exchanges are rotating destination tags, so you get a random one every time. So it would be difficult to make that kind of system. But we do use destination tags in our algorithms to extrapolate data and stuff like that. So yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
Otherwise, Wesa, you can dig deeper on this question later on, also in the admin chat. So thank you very much, Thomas.
Absolutely.
Great presentation. Good answers. Thank you.